Game 6 in the NBA Finals was last night. The Golden State Warriors are NBA champions again. How? How did this happen? How did we find ourselves where we are today? Did any of you expect that to be something someone would say in 2020?
Well, honestly, yeah, I kind of think so. So last night you hear Steph Curry and he goes, nobody thought we would be here. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching. I was like, I think a couple people did. Everybody knew that the only reason they sucked was because, one, they weren't healthy, and two, you lose probably the most talented player in the NBA. You're not going to be the best team right off the bat. It's going to take some time. But all it took was them getting healthy for them to get back to this point right now.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I mean, on the other side for Boston, it's just, go back to the number one thing that pops into my head is turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. I mean, you look at Game 5, Boston has 18 turnovers to the Warriors 6, and then in Game 6, Boston has 22 turnovers. And the only reason it was close is because Golden State was also playing softly with about 13 turnovers. So both sides were being inefficient with the ball, making sloppy plays, sloppy decisions, and Golden State is just the more experienced team. They've been there before, like Klay Thompson said, and they took advantage of the moment.
Do you want to know the crazy thing about that turnover stat you listed?
Mm-hmm.
The Warriors were second to last in turnovers in the regular season, ahead of just the Houston Rockets, who, if you could build a turnover factory, that would have been like Kevin Porter Jr. bouncing the ball off of his foot and Jalen Green doing the same exact thing for they picked up toward the end of the year. But that's how much the Warriors turn over the ball, that they were almost in that stratosphere. And yet they locked down so well defensively to end that series. Have we forgotten that the Celtics lost 3 games in a row when they're up 2-1? And people are saying, how are the Warriors going to respond? Because the Celtics can go up 3-1. And if they do, this series is over if they have all of that momentum. And yet somehow the Golden State Warriors, Stephen Curry, find a way to just not only outplay Jayson Tatum, but Jaylen Brown, who was the best player for the Celtics in the series. Their bench that was so strong for them in the conference finals, Grant Williams, Derek White, they had their moments. Defense is scheme a certain way. Grant Williams is getting open corner threes. Derek White's getting open looks. Al Horford is. Once those Celtics ball handlers, Tatum and Brown, were really being locked up by Andrew Wiggins, and then Klay Thompson, who really found his comfort zone defensively as the series went on, all of those turnovers ensued. And next thing you know, those secondary players who feed off of the ball handling and passing of those primary guards, and Marcus Smart, who may be the most inconsistent passer at the point guard position as a starter, there is no rhythm in their offense. Jayson Tatum sometimes will just fall asleep. And we're going to talk about Stephen Curry's ranking all time at first, but I want to talk about Jayson Tatum actually instead. I don't think we should talk about Steph because we should talk about Steph to be sure. I want to save that. But while we're on the topic, when we're looking at Jayson Tatum, is he a top 10 player in the NBA?
No.
Yes.
No. Hold on.
Justin.
Right. Go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
No. I'm going to let you go. Go.
Okay. So for top 10, I believe he will be there eventually. He's got the talent, he's got the skills, he's got the athleticism, he's got the speed, he's got the size. He's a complete player. And the way he played defense on Kevin Durant in the first round of the playoffs was spectacular. All right.
I'm waiting for the but.
So, but it's just he hasn't put it all together yet, and it comes with experience. It comes with that experience. It just takes time. So with Jayson Tatum, it's going to take time, and eventually he'll get there. It's just not there yet.
Okay.
Go.
All right, just hear me out. So I hear experience so much. Everybody wants to throw out experience. Maybe finals experience, but this guy has had conference finals experience. He's had big playoff experience, big games to get his team into a playoff position experience. He's played in big moments. And not to mention, he's only 24. So I look at guys, and we could point at PG or your boy Jimmy Butler. We've seen their ceiling. And the fact that we can say Jayson Tatum is anywhere close to these guys at 24 years old, bro, this guy is top 10, and he blows them away. And I'm not saying by a little bit, by a whole lot. I throw him in. I'd say he's a top 7 player. I'd go that far.
Justin, all right, so the biggest reason why I think Tatum struggled is because he was gassed. He goes to the Olympics last year, and he basically had no offseason. Because remember, since the season started late last season, it ended in June. And then he has that quick turnaround going into training camp. He's top 5 minutes played this in the regular season. Postseason, he goes to 2 Game 7s. And then by Game 4, Game 5 or even Game 1 of the finals, you can tell something was up and he was gassed. His shots were short. There wasn't a whole lot of lift.
Yeah.
But here's the issue. Jimmy Butler thoroughly outplayed him in the conference finals. It was, in my opinion, not close who the best player in that series was. Jimmy had the complete control, and the only reason why he didn't go to the finals was because his team was bombarded by injuries. Lowry, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo was on something because Lowry wasn't there. It was that domino effect of Miami's offense just not being capable enough, because basketball is all about weathering the storm of injuries in the postseason. And I think for Jayson Tatum, I don't think he's better than Jimmy Butler right now. But yeah, he can be in 2 years when Jimmy's 34 years old. But we just saw in the conference finals, even with Jimmy's limitations as a three-point shooter, maybe he's not this all-world playmaker in spite of that, but he was clearly the best player in the finals. We see Steph. Is Steph a top 5 player? Some people would say no, and Steph was so much better throughout the entire series. For me, my top 10 is Giannis at number 1, Jokic at number 2, Embiid at number 3, Luka at number 4. Brand's going to like that one. Kevin Durant at number 5, LeBron at 6. I think you could flip-flop the two of them. Same with Luka. I think they're very close, but I take into account durability, availability. That's why I have Luka over the two of them. Then Steph at 7. I'm probably going to boost him. I'm going to switch him and KD. Probably put KD at 7. 8, Kawhi. You haven't seen him play. Then you have Tatum, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Trae Young, Dame, and John Morant.
So you had Tatum at 9?
I have Tatum. I actually have him at number 10 behind Paul George. I have Paul George ahead of him because we've seen Paul George also take a team to the conference finals, a Game 7 against LeBron James. He's a new player now, and I would argue he's a better version of himself, even though he was injured this season. I think durability does matter, and Tatum's a more durable player. I think Paul George doesn't have those same moments where he just disappears. If you're number 1, you can't disappear. We saw when he's playing off of Kawhi in the bubble, there were some sketchy moments. But then in 2021, without Kawhi, he was the best player in that Phoenix series. He was so good. And we saw him literally win 4 straight games with Kawhi missing 2 against the Jazz. He's been able to be that guy consistently for the Clippers. And I think while Tatum will be better in a few seasons, Paul George's game's still going to age well, just with his shooting and size. And to me, he's a better playmaker. Defensively, Tatum is a better on-ball defender. We saw what he did against Kevin Durant. Yeah. But off-ball, I would say that Paul George is better. And if he's a better three-point shooter, like in terms of percentages, this season he was down, but generally we can, I think, all agree he's a better mid-range or more efficient mid-range shooter than Tatum, right? So he's a better shooter, better playmaker. I think it's close between the two of them. But at the same time, I have Paul George ahead of him because of that.
Let me get. So basically, what I want to say to Justin is, so who are you taking off the top 10? So if obviously you got your LeBrons who's in the top 10, Curry's, Durant's, Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, Doncic, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people right there, right? For me, I also have Kawhi Leonard. I think he's a lock for top 10. You can't. So that's 8 for me. Then you have. So you're taking off either Chris Paul or Jimmy Butler.
I'm taking off Jimmy Butler.
But see, here's the thing. Like John just said, Jimmy Butler just outplayed him in the conference finals.
But that's fine. But John also said that he looked gassed.
Okay, so but hold on. He's a elite athlete getting paid millions of dollars. I don't want to hear the gassed excuse because Jimmy Butler Jimmy Butler with a less talented team took LeBron and AD 6 games without Goran Dragic, their leading playoff scorer, and Bam Adebayo was banged up the whole season. All right, and we
Listen,
saw the performances that he put up in the finals. Name Jayson Tatum's moment in the finals this year. Well, what game was it that he showed up? What game?
I'm not debating that. I'm not trying to even slight Jimmy Butler. I love Jimmy buckets. I would throw him number 11 or I'll swap him with CP at 10, if it makes you happy. But honestly, just from my perspective, I guess I just look at his game where I know that there's more in the tank than what we've seen. I know we know Paul George's game. It's not going to get any better or any worse. We know it. Same thing with Jimmy buckets. Well, actually, he surprised a couple of people this year, but
yeah.
But for me, that's why I said I love Jimmy buckets, man. But I honestly think Jayson Tatum's game he's going to continue to evolve. He's going to be one of the best defenders in the league. He's going to be a top 10 scorer in the league.
I agree. He will be probably a top 5 two-way player in the league. Not yet, though. That's my whole thing. He will put it all when he puts it all together. We will see it and we will realize it at that moment.
But isn't that scary? At 24 years old, this is what we're seeing. I mean, before the Miami series, like this guy's a nightmare for defenders. He's a nightmare to game plan against for any coach. Like at 24 years old, man, this guy's gonna run the league. I look at him and Luka, and I'm just like, man, I want to see these two guys in an NBA Finals one day.
But do you think Tatum can carry an offense like Luka can? Luka's offense is so simple because of how transcendent an offensive talent
I
is.
completely agree with you there.
And that's what I was going to say, John. That's what I was going to say is that Luka's the primary. He's making all the decisions. All the decisions. Jayson Tatum's not making all the decisions. And if we saw him in the finals this year, when they asked him to make decisions, he'd drive to the hoop under the basket in midair. And that's what you can't do that. No plan. You're just throwing it. Like,
listen, he folded, man. He folded like an Auntie Anne's pretzel. But it happens, bro. Like, I saw a crazy stat, and I think it was Kobe Bryant's first NBA Finals, and it was he had a poor finals, man. It happens, and you can't expect greatness on every single level. You're gonna fail at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if we find Jayson Tatum in the same spot next season.
So I think we agree. I think we agree. He's a great player. He's going to be better. But we just differ on, is it now or is it in the future?